Welcome back to Voices 2021. We're back. We've been fed wherever you are in the world. I hope you had time to take a break and digest everything that happened here this morning. Thank you for all of your feedback. I've been seeing all of it come through on social media. You're using the hashtag BOF Voices so we can follow where you are all over the world. If you have comments or questions, please put them in the chat window next to the video player. It's time for our session on technology and innovation. And some of our best talks are always tucked away behind this somewhat nerdy title. This session is really about what it says on the tin. Our speakers today will give you a compelling glimpse into how innovation is shaping the future of fashion, creating new business opportunities, and also addressing some of its greatest challenges. We'll dive into the world of virtual fashion with Paula Sello and Alyssa Olbekova, the digital couture designers behind London-based brand Ouroboros, and discuss the future of the metaverse with the curator Lady Phoenix, Ian Rogers, and Joe Hage. And then stay tuned for a very special performance by the resident choreographer of the Royal Ballet, the very, very well-respected Wayne McGregor. But to start, innovation doesn't come just in the form of new technologies. It can also come from some of the planet's oldest natural life forms, the mushroom. This year, it felt like the universe was pointing me in the direction to learn about mycology, the science of fungi. In March, our editorial associate Rachel Deely broke the news that the storied French luxury brand Hermes is collaborating with the California biotech startup MycoWorks to reimagine its Victoria travel bag in a material that imitates the properties of leather, but is made from mycelium. A few months later, I serendipitously met Andrew and Simon Salter, and they told me they are building a mushroom tea company. They explained to me the incredible healing powers of mushrooms for our own physical and mental health. And then in October at Paris Fashion Week, Stella McCartney unveiled Frame Milo, the first handbag made with vegan mushroom leather made by Both Threads, a company led by a former Voices speaker, CEO Dan Wiedmeyer. I was hooked. In fashion, they say trends come in threes, and so I needed to learn more about mycology. I don't remember learning about fungi in high school. I remember learning about the plant and animal kingdoms, flora and fauna, but why not fungi? Our first speaker's book, Entangled Life, helped to answer this question. Sometimes fungi get grouped together with flora. Sometimes they are grouped in an extra category called biota. But most of the time, mushrooms, fungi, mycelium, it's all ignored. Merlin Sheldrake wants to change that. He believes that fungi can make our worlds, change our minds, and shape our futures. And so, to open our session on technology and innovation, Merlin is going to give us a crash course in mycology. Then, he will join a panel with Andrew and Simon Salter of Dirty, the mushroom tea company that I mentioned, and Dr. Matthew Sullen, CEO of MycoWorks, who is working with Hermes, and they will be in conversation with our London editor, Sarah Kent. But first, please welcome the very well-respected mycologist, Merlin Sheldrake.
Well, thanks, Imran, and thanks to the team at Business of Fashion, and thanks to you all for being here, and thanks to everyone tuning in at home. So, the theme of this event, I'm informed, is human connections, which I think is a very prescient theme for this moment in time. And so it feels appropriate to be talking about fungi, who are connectors. Fungi weave their bodies into relation with themselves, and with their physical environments, and with other organisms. My exploration of these entanglements has caused me to rethink much of what I thought I knew. Fungi trick us out of our preconceptions, and they invite us to question some of the categories, often very tired categories, that we use to organize our lives: intelligence, individuality, autonomy, independence. So there are many ways to be a fungus. Fungi are a kingdom of life. This is as broad and busy a category as animals or plants. But fungi have not received a kingdom's worth of attention, which is problematic for all sorts of reasons that we'll come on to later. Our ignorance is easily summarized. Of the perhaps 6 million species of fungi that exist on the planet, only about 8% have been described by humans. So when we think of fungi, we normally think of mushrooms. But mushrooms are just the reproductive structures of fungi, the place where they produce spores, which helps them to disperse. Most fungi live most of their lives as mycelium, branching, fusing networks of tubular cells. And mycelium is how fungi feed. Animals find food in the world and put it inside their bodies. Mycelium put their bodies inside their food. Fungi put their bodies inside their food using mycelium. And mycelium is a very diverse way of life. Mycelial networks can be so small as to fit on a speck of house dust, but can also range over kilometers. And in fact, the largest organisms we've described are mycelial networks that sprawl over kilometers. And mycelium is everywhere. In a teaspoon of soil, there might be anywhere from 100 meters to 10 kilometers of mycelium. It's a kind of ecological connective tissue. At school, kids are shown pictures of the human body as a network of blood vessels, a network of bones, a network of muscles. And if we could make equivalent diagrams of ecosystems, one of those pictures would show the mycelial networks tangling through the soil, through the bodies of animals and plants, whether alive or dead, through sulfurous sediments at the bottom of the ocean, along coral reefs, through the shells of crabs and lobsters, in the canvases of old master paintings hanging in museums, and in reams of unused fabric lying in the basement of ateliers. Mycelium is a way of life that challenges our animal imaginations. Mycelial networks have an astonishing capacity to regenerate. A fragment of a network can become a whole new organism, a whole new fungal network. Mycelium can solve problems. They can find their way through labyrinths. They're amazing transport networks. They're constantly remodeling themselves to respond to their local challenges. And they have astonishing metabolic prowess. They can produce enzymes and all sorts of chemicals that don't just break things down, but build things up, as we'll hear later. So imagine this picture again of the mycelial network strung through the world, but this time don't imagine a static network. Imagine a dynamic network, seething with activity. Mycelium is a living seam that weaves much of life into relation. It embodies the principle of ecology, which is the relationship between organisms, and it reminds us of the shimmering networks of interconnection and interrelationship that is the living world, that is life. For these reasons and more, fungi have found their way into interesting relationships, world-building relationships with all sorts of organisms over the history of life, including humans. They make interesting and valuable partners for us at this time as we adapt to life on a damaged planet, whether it's medicines, penicillin, for example, which transformed modern medicine, was extracted from a fungus. As foods, new meat substitutes or mushrooms, which have been eaten by humans for a very long time. As in any kind of plant enterprise, whenever we grow plants, whether in forestry or agriculture in our gardens, we're cultivating fungi because all plants depend on fungi that live in their roots and weave their way through their bodies, through their leaves and through their stems. When we harness the decomposition, the abilities of fungi to decompose materials, whether to break things down and to compost waste, or to think about remediating polluted environments in the process of mycoremediation. It's psychedelics. Fungi change our minds, literally, often in really powerful generative ways. And also in the ways that they can be used to build materials which we can use to reform and rethink many of our industries. So thinking about fungi makes the world look different, and they're powerful allies for us at this moment of crisis and transformation. And at this point, I'd like to invite up my co-panelists to join me.
Thank you so much for such an amazing conversation starter. We're about to have the conversation. I thought it was so interesting the way you talked about how mushrooms relate to interconnectedness, because that's what we're talking about here, and how they can transform the way we think about things. The first point of interconnectedness I want to bring us to is the fashion industry, Matt, because Imran introduced this session by talking about MycoWorks partnering with Hermes. And when we learned about this, we were so excited, because for all we had Cedric from Balenciaga talking about being at the forefront of change, the luxury industry historically has been very traditional. Hermes in particular is known for that's one of its great selling points. It is a traditional house. And so to convince the sort of pinnacle of luxury leather goods to sample something new is huge. So talk me through how you convinced Hermes to try mycelium leather.
Sure. Well, I think, of course, we're seeing right now that there's an enormous amount of hype around non-animal, non-plastic materials in the fashion industry. And the challenge that this area has seen so far is one around quality and performance. And what is amazing about mycelium, and that you described so well, is that the interconnectedness of these cells is something that at MycoWorks we have been able to tune with a technology that we call fine mycelium into something that allows it to be a platform for designers. So designers can now think about the material properties that they want at the very beginning of their process. They can start the design process with the material rather than with the object itself. And what that means is we offer these different levers, these different dimensions with which we can work with designers to change the mechanical properties of the material. So at MycoWorks, we've been able to create more of an intertwinedness in the material than what naturally occurs. And as a result, we can impart this incredible durability, this great hand feel, and create the emotional response that natural materials like leather already create and that we're already used to, because leather is a phenomenal material. Leather is the original performance material. It's something that we almost take for granted about how well it performs and the quality that it has. And so many materials that are on the market that are being marketed as alternatives to leather just don't have the sort of properties and emotional connection that leather can offer. And this is something that mycelium can, and that our technology, fine mycelium, sort of elevates. And so, with Hermes, it was all about quality, and I think that's something that MycoWorks has uniquely been able to achieve with this technology.
How with mycelium? What have you done?
So we tune the mechanical properties as it grows by altering the fermentation conditions, by performing different operations on our mycelium. And what results is a structure of these cells as they're growing in that is altered. It becomes denser, it becomes more intertwined. So what we're really doing is using it as a platform for material science. Like carbon. Carbon can be diamond, carbon can be graphite. Both are pure carbon, but what differs in the material is how the atoms arrange themselves. And so similarly, mycelium is this incredible material that allows us to change the way the cells are arranged to give these different properties. And so what the proprietary technology that we've developed is about are different ways to impart these new microstructures on the material, and in turn deliver a wide range of different types of leather-like materials. We can simulate a sheepskin, we can simulate a calf hide, we can then impart dyes and embossed patterns and anything that might be used to make it look familiar. But really, it's a new category. It's something that can stand on its own and is something that I think will ultimately affect the supply chain in the fashion industry very significantly.
And I think it was interesting when we were talking last night, you know, you're not just using any mycelium, you're using reishi mushroom mycelium. And, you know, Andrew and Simon, when I was talking to you, the reishi mushroom looms large over dirty as well, which is, again, this entanglement that we're seeing. You know, how do you approach the mushrooms that you are using, and how are you looking at it this differently?
Yeah, I mean, really good question. I think when it comes to mushrooms, they have multiple uses, multiple purposes, and also solutions as well. So it was interesting you were talking about your founder was actually in the 80s during the AIDS crisis drinking the reishi mushroom, which, like all mushrooms, you know, that we sell, are incredible for the immune system. They actually have this thing, they have polysaccharides, which is an active compound within all the mushrooms, which ours have a very high count of. And what that actually does is it's like an immune modulator. So if you're getting like an allergy, your immune system becomes like hyperactive, overactive, and it brings it down to a balanced level. You know, if you're getting a common cold or a virus, it's underactive. So again, it balances it out. And I think, you know, as we sort of move into this world around viruses and pandemics, one of the most important things we need to do is look after our immune systems, you know, look after our minds, our most precious resources that we depend on for happiness, to be content. And the incredible thing is, the answer is in the forest. These mushrooms changed my brother and I's life. You know, we had chronic burnout, you know, we were insomniacs, kind of living that entrepreneur lifestyle. Things like sleep are seen as weak. But we saw when we inducted the mushrooms into our day and our morning, we took them to the gym, to the office, our lives completely changed. And because they're antibacterial, they're antiviral, they're anti-inflammatory. I mean, the chaga mushroom is another mushroom. It's probably in the coffee you're drinking right now. In 1 teaspoon contains the equivalent of 600 blueberries.
They are functional. You're saying that our friends are drinking these mushrooms. They're not psychoactive at all. But I feel being on the stage, by the way, we're like the kids in the mycology world. I mean, I hated science at school, but to be here talking like Andy was saying, we came from a chronic burnout, and it was the idea of being presented with mushrooms to commence the breakthrough, as it were. And like Imran was saying, and what you were saying, there's been this wild misconception about something that's so healing. You spoke about flora and fauna, animals and trees, but I believe in the human life cycle. Our viewscape is trees, animal, plants. We never quite see the mushroom, but it's there, and it's there, and it grows at night, and it perishes within 3 days, so you kind of miss it. But it's healing the planet. As much as it's healing the planet, it's healing, you know, the future of our well-being. And what's extraordinary, hating science at one point and now loving it, because it took me a burnout to recognize, there's this symbiosis relationship we have in mushrooms. So, you know, for example, this may surprise you, but we share about 50% DNA of mushrooms, which I was talking to Merlin backstage, you know, drinking these teas and seeing how they get into the circulatory system, why they're so bioavailable. The fact that you can drink reishi, which is one of the oldest mushrooms and most researched mushrooms in the world, has this incredible compound that basically calms the nervous system down, like almost, well, I call it the Woody Allen. It just shuts that thing, and it allows you to become incredibly present and almost increase the sleep. Because I came from a position of, you know, sleep deprivation, and all it was, I just couldn't, you know, quiet the mind down. And I think for anyone in an entrepreneurial kind of position or pushing the envelope in their respected industry, to have that kind of symbiotic relationship with mushroom is incomparable. And there is a global pandemic in anxiety as well. And what these mushrooms have taught us is that you can live a wonderful life from sunrise to sunset and bring these mushrooms into your lifestyle. The great challenge, I think, is always going to be the fear that these mushrooms have. And I think by doing what we're doing, and by you all drinking our mushrooms at the moment, you're going to see how it's going to optimize your well-being. So the real mission for us is how many more people can be healed by these mushrooms.
Well, Marlon, how are you seeing this sort of mushroom moment that we're talking about? You know, we're seeing more use cases, more people talking about it, people being more open to trying mushrooms, you know, both in tea, but, you know, in Silicon Valley, people are microdosing left, right, and center. You know, how are you seeing this change? What do you think it could mean for the way we view fungi?
Well, I think it means a lot. I mean, it's a very welcome change from my point of view. It's overcoming centuries of mycophobia. Worth pointing out, though, in some parts of the world, some cultures, some East Asian cultures, mushrooms have been loved for many, many years, and drunk as teas and used as medicines and eaten as foods, and all sorts of mushrooms. In some parts of Yunnan province, there's hundreds of different edible mushrooms eaten. Think of how many you find in the supermarket here. So, in some sense, we're just catching up, and it's about time.
What's the opportunity here? What have we lost by spending so long not focusing on fungi?
Fungi hold the biosphere together. And if we don't think about them, if we don't enlarge, deepen, and expand our awareness to include the jobs that they do in the soil, in dead and dying plant material, which is actually the beginning of whole new sets of lives, then we'll damage these lives, these fungal lives, without realizing. And you can see this taking place over the course of the 20th century with industrial agriculture, for example. Application of huge amounts of chemicals, whether herbicides, fungicides, or fertilizers. Massive disruption to the soil compaction. We're losing so much soil, we're losing so many fungal habitats because we weren't thinking about them. We weren't thinking about these organisms that live in the soil and who do so much, who create the space in which we live. We walk around in the space that decomposition leaves behind.
Although I think we were quite capable of ruining things that we were aware of too, based on how we've been going. But I do think fungi offer a really good solution. And Matt, I think it's really interesting in the context of some of the challenges for fashion in particular that we've been talking about this morning and yesterday with the sessions we recorded around sustainability. How much do you see, or how quickly could we see your MycoWorks leather alternative moving into the industry in products, scaling up, actually transforming the way we think about the products we have?
Well, we're seeing incredible demand for these sorts of materials, and I think the really interesting thing to us is that this demand is not only based on sustainability. Of course, you have an overwhelming drive from consumers right now for brands to offer sustainable products, but I think at the same time, brands are looking at their supply chains. This predated COVID, right? Supply chain is now a word that fortunately we all, I think, have seen a little bit too much of lately, but even before COVID, the industry was looking at their supply chain for materials and trying to figure out how are they going to fuel the next 20 or 30 years of growth, right? You've seen this explosive growth in the luxury industry over the past couple decades, driven in large part by the developing world. And now we've really, in a lot of ways, maxed out many of the sources of high quality materials. And so where is the next 20 years of high quality natural materials going to come from? And that's where I think fine mycelium plays a major role. So we're working on expanding as quickly as possible. We have a plant that's open in California right now. We have another plant, a very large plant that we'll be excited to announce some more news on soon. And then we're hoping to build many additional plants after that. And I think the opportunities that this platform offers to co-locate plants with leather tanneries, with finished good fabrication plants, allows all kinds of efficiencies, whether it's waste reduction, just-in-time delivery, a made-to-order, made-to-spec natural material, which is really the first of its kind. All of these things allow brands to now think about a new supply chain where sustainability is just part of it. Sustainability is the new table stakes, right? You just have to have sustainability in anything that you do that's new now. And I believe that you have to have more than that to have a lasting change, though. There has to be other efficiencies that can be gained, other value that can be added. And I think that's where mycelium is going to play a role.
Is there a contradiction in that, though? Fueling growth while also pursuing something more sustainable?
I think that these things can coexist as the industry brings more circularity into their supply chains overall, and we play a role in that. And we're heartened to see that brands are beginning to think more and more holistically about that.
And I think what we're talking about here has huge potential and huge opportunity, but Simon, you mentioned the fear around mushrooms. What are the barriers to change that we're seeing?
Well, firstly, I know growing up, surrounded by authority figures that would violently point at a mushroom and tell you not to touch it because it's poisonous. I think there's a misconception, there's a narrative that needs to be changed. Hence, you know, you say this is business, and yeah, it is a business, but there's something way beyond there. There's a moral compass, like there's an education that needs to be handed to the mass and to a younger generation as well. So for us, it's really about utilising these extraordinary, profound findings and research like Merlin is talking about, and almost
more accessible,
simplifying it.
Yeah.
Because Andy was using a lot of words before, and some of them are very scientific.
I mean, what we've tried to do is break every mushroom down into its core purpose. So lion's mane, we talk about being the focus mushroom, so people know they can, you know, perform better mentally. We talk about cordyceps as sort of the sort of energy mushroom, giving you natural energy. Chaga is the immunity mushroom. Reishi is the calm and the sleep mushroom as well. But I think what we're trying to do is looking at, you know, brands that sort of sit at every sort of you know, corner street like Starbucks. And people are complaining about their coffee. They talk about sort of stimulation. They talk about mid-afternoon crashes. Talk about being anxious, stressed out, not being able to sleep. So we look at a situation like that as what's the solution to a drink that people still want to have, rather than alternative coffee, alternative to coffee. What can we do in terms of an alternative coffee? So what we've done is reduce the caffeine by under 50%, so it stops that stimulation. We've added the mushrooms in so you get that natural energy. So you get this slow release of energy all day, so you don't have to stop reaching for it at 3 p.m. again. But then also it's giving you a better, stronger immune system. It's making your skin glow. And then what's getting reported to us, actually people are sleeping better, and even insomniacs, which is the most exciting thing.
What do you see, Merlin, as being the barriers here?
Just to point out that I think it's important to remember that fungi haven't been busily evolving for 1 billion years to make our skin glow.
It's a nice side effect, though.
Nice though it may be. So do I. So I think there are lots of barriers, but ignorance is one. Fungi haven't had this kingdom's worth of attention, as I say, so they don't have good representation in school science curricula. Mm-hmm. They don't have as much research funds. They don't have university departments and professors and students. And this means we just know less. There's less investment. There are less fungal businesses looking to solve problems with fungi. So I think that's part of it. Part of it is that this ignorance comes from the fact they live their lives out of sight. You know, they're hard for us to know about. They're hard for us to see. And researching them is a big challenge. And this is one of the fun things about working with fungi, but it's also, it's not easy.
Do you think we're at a tipping point? I mean, in your talk, you spoke about all of these different applications that we're seeing come through, and in areas and sectors that are getting much more attention, getting much more funding, but in part because of interest in sustainability, in part because of more and more interest in health and wellness. Are we at a tipping point?
I think so. We know a lot more about fungi now. We know a lot more about microbes in general. New technologies have opened up these sub-visible worlds. And there are so many multiple crises that we face, and that there's so much need for us to take in a more ecological view. Fungi are kind of poster organisms for ecological thinking. And so I think we really are at a tipping point, and I'm delighted to witness it.
So Matt, tipping point, what does that mean for you? When are we going to see MycoWorks products on the market? When can we go and buy them? And how fast are they going to be available?
So we're going to have multiple products on shelves with various brand partners in 2022. And we're going to be excited to announce some of those other brand partnerships soon.
Yeah, Matt told me that he wouldn't give away any secrets on stage earlier. And Simon and Andrew, what about for you? What does a tipping point look like?
I think the tipping point is where, you know, I feel like what we're trying to do is get mushrooms into the cup, 1 cup at a time. So we're not trying to change people's behavior. Like, we don't want people to stop drinking coffee or not have a hot chocolate before bed. We want to try and sort of coalesce with what they're already doing. So I think we want to be in every country. I think we want everyone drinking mushrooms because we know the power it has to make a positive change, both in terms of mental health and also immunity health and physical health. What do you say?
Yeah. Pretty much what he's saying. And there is another part, which is, I think, the moment you do empower people to understand the profound but subtle healing properties of these mushrooms, you can then transcend into the other area, which is certainly the psychedelic part, which is getting a lot of attention, a lot of investment, and is becoming an important conversation to have where many years ago it was suppressed. But now, for the importance of mental health, people are going through their challenges personally, and a time when it's hard to share vulnerabilities as men too. The research in some of the most established institutions from Stanford, Harvard, NYU, I think it's coming to a point where we are with Dirty, there will be a transition, and there is a psychedelic renaissance. So I think our tipping point is when...
Is that the future of Dirty? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, I wouldn't say totally that. I just think that from the functional side, it's important to allow people to empower the healing benefits, and it is all in spirit. There is a psychedelic renaissance coming. I think people need to be empowered to understand more about mushrooms on both sides.
Mom, what's your take on that side of things? Because obviously, you know, there was a lot of research into this side of things for the 70s, got shut down pretty strictly. Do you have any worries that we could go down that same route again, and all of the progress we've made and interest in mushrooms could go back many years as a result?
There are lots of concerns. That's one of them. And it's important to remember that these psychoactive medicines have been used for traditional societies for an unknowably long time. They're deeply bound up in old human cultures, some of which are still around today and still carry this wisdom. And I think one of the risks with the psychedelic movement moving so fast is that some of these voices and knowledge traditions will be marginalized. And so there are lots of risks. But I'm very excited to see it move forward so fast, and for this research to be uncovering so much of what humans have known for such a long time, that these substances can help us step into new ways of thinking, heal our problems, and invite us into a larger state of mind.
Well, thank you all so much for taking the time. I think it's very fitting to have kicked off this session talking about a disruptive force that is billions of years old. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Are you into mushrooms now? Yeah. I'm obsessed. So from mushrooms and mycology, we move to cybersecurity. We all know that e-commerce sales skyrocketed during the pandemic. But as a result, fashion brands everywhere, retailers all over the world, are processing and securing more private, personal data than ever before. That's where cybersecurity comes in, as we explore in Theme 9 in our State of Fashion 2022 report, Cyber Resilience. Cybercrime is on the rise, and increasingly, fashion companies are becoming targets. In August, the Korean arm of French luxury brand Chanel issued an apology after personal data belonging to its customers was exposed. Guess, French Connection, Bonobos, Moda Operandi have also confirmed data breaches and ransomware attacks in recent years. And in our annual survey of executives for the State of Fashion, 53% of fashion executives told us that it is likely or very likely that they will face a significant cyber attack in 2022. So how can we be more diligent with our digitization? Our next speaker has the answers. I first met Gentry Lane in 2007 when BOF was but a little blog. In fact, and this is a very interesting factoid, Gentry was the first subscriber to the BOF Daily Digest email. Come on, Gentry. And she had
It's true.
And she had a lingerie brand called Gentry de Paris. And she contacted me via email. And she said, I want to meet you.
Yeah, you're fabulous. You could tell back then.
We met in January 2007. And I didn't realize it, but Gentry, as she'll tell you, has a background in tech. And so when I saw a recent LinkedIn update that Gentry put up, I asked her to come here and talk to us about cybersecurity.
Because I was at NATO. Yeah,
Yeah.
speaking at NATO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Gentry Lane.
Hi, everyone. This has been a great day of talks. Everything's been so inspirational, so get ready to get dark. Cyberspace is a dangerous place. It didn't used to be that way. Oops, let me start my slides. Well, all right, keep it there, but that's fine. Yeah, it's a dangerous place. Didn't used to be that way. If the commercial internet's been around for about 30 years, the first 15 was relatively safe. I mean, there were viruses and worms in your, rando Nigerian prince scammer, but there wasn't cyber conflict. And that's where we are now. In 2007, I think it was, or 2005, the cyber domain was designated as a warfighting domain. So just like land, sea, air, and space, cyberspace is a warfighting domain. And we are in an active armed conflict right now. I know it sounds weird to call it an armed conflict, but cyber weapons are indeed weapons. They're not lethal in the traditional sense, but they can have catastrophic effects. And I'm on the front line of this cyber conflict. I run a company called Innova Intelligence. We're a software company in the defense sector. I work specifically with governments and NATO and intelligence agencies, and also the private companies that make up critical infrastructure. These are the major threat actors. I don't know if you realize, but they have full cyber forces, cyber armies, essentially. Hundreds of thousands of people that wake up every day, go to their job, and their job is to break into our critical infrastructure, to deny, disrupt, or destroy, and compromise our institutions. And they do this to advance their national objectives. They move up by us going down. Like Imran said, of this Venn diagram of the best kind of people in the world, kudos for Imran for knowing the one person that fits in the middle. And yeah, I used to, like he said, I used to run a company in the mid-2000s. I lived in Paris, and the lingerie was called Genterie de Paris. And we sold in 21 prestigious sales points across the world. And I did collaborations with Victoria's Secret and JVC and Topshop, and it was fabulous. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. We leveraged the brand into live events and literally sparked a burlesque revolution in Paris. It was a great time. And yeah, it's a legit question. How did a lingerie designer get into national security? Well, before I was a lingerie designer, I worked in software. And I got a call from the FBI, which was terrifying. They wanted to know if I was a Russian hacker. That I am not. And I thought that they should know this, right? I mean, you would think they would know. But that's what got me interested in all of this, because I started to see the scope and scale of this very, very fascinating problem. So I spend a lot less time at fashion shows and a lot more time briefing generals, and which is fun in its own way. It's a little different. We have a technique that's called bluff. So I don't know if anyone's ever briefed a 4-star general before. Yeah, no. But we have this technique. It's called bluff. Bottom line up front. You usually only have like 5 minutes with them, and you have to get your point across really fast, usually in 3 main points. Can't use any jargon, and yeah, it's fun. So I thought, if it's okay with you, we would do a bluff on the state of cybersecurity right now. Yeah? Okay. So if I were briefing a general, you're all 4 stars now. We'll talk about current situation, what needs to be done, what you can do. I would say, ma'am or sir, we are outnumbered. The situation is bad. we are up against 4 major cyber forces that are well-equipped, well-trained, and really, really good hackers. They are breaking into all aspects, all 16 sectors of critical infrastructure regularly, successfully, so we're outnumbered, and they are winning. They're after 2 main things. They want IP, and they want to degrade our systems. Now, the IP that these major threat actors are looking for is primarily in the bio sector, and also weapons. So this is the good news. The good news is these cyber military forces are not coming after the fashion industry. But they will come after all the critical infrastructure that you rely on. So communications, transport, internet, all the things that you absolutely need to do business. Okay, that's the good news. Here's the bad news. There's another adversary that you need to be worried about, and those are criminal syndicates. Now, they are using the same tools that the cyber military forces uses, but handed down. So they're using their hand-me-downs. They're really good. They're really sophisticated. They have no ideological agenda, so they don't need to advance any national issues. They're out for money and money only. Guess who has a lot of money? The fashion industry. Now, they're working right now, they're going through critical infrastructure and water authorities, ports, not so lucrative. A lot of them are in the public sector, a lot of them are in the private sector. Their modus operandi, their weapon of choice, is ransomware. I think you've probably all heard about ransomware, yeah? A little bit. It's a kind of malware that spreads really fast and turns your computers into paperweights, and then they'll call you and say, you need to pay this ransom, and we'll give you the decryption key. Okay, if you take nothing away from this talk, do not pay the ransom. The decryption key doesn't work. They're just telling you that. And more often than anything, it's less expensive to throw away all your company's computers than to pay the $1 million to not get your systems encrypted, and insurance doesn't cover it if it's perpetuated by a lot of these major threat actors. So, let's talk about what needs to be done. And the answer is a lot. Now, as a private person or as a private company, you're not responsible for national security. The military is, or law enforcement is. And a lot needs to happen at a lot of different levels. Like I mentioned earlier, I work at the NATO level. I also work with American government. Things need to happen at the state level. They also need to happen at an industry level. Now, I know the fashion industry is inherently quite competitive, but this is an area where it would be useful to collaborate, because as a lot of people have mentioned earlier, policy will follow people if industry leads. Let's get to the good part. What can you do? Like I always say, think like a hacker. So think of whatever is most valuable to you will be most valuable to them. And it could be business continuity. If they were to get you a couple days before the défilé, before your show, you'll be more likely to pay or comply with whatever they're asking for. So it could be your customers list. It's probably not your emails, like it is with politicians. They're always going after their emails. Or it could be, it could be your supply chain, your factories, things that you wouldn't want competition to know about. Bake in security for the start. So we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things next. My new friends are talking about fashion in the metaverse. Don't let security be an afterthought. When you're building your spaces and designing your assets in the metaverse, build in security from the beginning, just like you would in a physical store. And don't think about your employees like a liability. Think of them as your first line of defense against really sophisticated bad actors. Look, cybersecurity is really boring. unless it's not. So cybersecurity training is the worst, but talking about cyber conflict is pretty cool. When people have the context, they're more likely to accept responsibility and opt in to protect, your brand, your company. Also, this changes the calculus, by the way, because now if all employees of all fashion industry are on the ball, now we've outnumbered the adversary. So, brief your authorities or befriend the authorities now. So you have two choices. That statistic, by the way, of 53%, no, 100%. Everyone is going to have a major catastrophic breach. Look, if the DoD and the NSA can get breached, you're going to get breached too. It's just a matter of when, not if. So the question is, do you want to get a call from the FBI and them telling you you've been hacked, or would you rather find out you're hacked and then call your friend at the FBI and say, hey, can you help me out? You probably want the latter. Oh, by the way, I think I'm going to pull a Tommy Hilfiger and say, I probably know the person that you need to speak with at the FBI, and I'll make a call for you. If you want to get introduced, because they're hard to find, but you really should, they're not in the phone book, but you really should, I'm not exaggerating, make relationships with these kind of authorities, because you don't want to be stuck not knowing what to do when catastrophe hits. So I'd be happy to introduce anyone. I have a stack of business cards. You can find me later. Let me whip through this and say, like we said, it's a when, not an if, and it's all going to change. So the minute you get your crisis response plans in place, it's all going to change. So the coolest thing about the metaverse and Web 3.0, the things that make it so compelling is its ubiquity, the global reach, the volatility, everything's changing nonstop. It's the things that make it so cool for fashion is also what makes it so attractive for bad actors. So it's a really fascinating problem. And think about it as something that, how do we solve this problem? Now, working in fashion in the 2000s, I lived there for 14 years and worked in fashion for 10. One thing I know for sure is the fashion industry is really good at solving really hard problems. And your job is not so different than mine. Planning a brand strategy and planning a military strategy, you go about it the same way. My job is to protect and defend. Yours is to surprise and delight. Neither one of us have enough time or enough money, but you pull it off better than we do, usually. So think about this as, like I said, like a fascinating problem that can be solved, and collaboration is going to be key. So I've been talking to you like as if you were all generals right now, but let's talk again, like, just to wrap things up, like we're people, because we are kind of. What kind of cyber-physical world do you want to live in? And I say cyber-physical because the world is cyber-physical now. That's just how it is. The edges blur, but we are constantly in a cyber-physical universe. So I can tell you, I want to live in one where, I'm missing my marks. I'm trying to find the line. Here we go. I want to live in a cyber-physical world where I have reasonable privacy. I want to live in a cyber-physical world where my personal information is safe. I want to live in a cyber-physical world where my financial transactions go through without problems, and I have access to communications and internet connection whenever I need it. And I want to be able to visit a metaverse where my avatar is safe, and the assets that I purchase are authentic, and your stores are always open 24/7. So to do all that, we're going to have to solve some hard problems, but they're fascinating problems. And like I said, I think you are all pretty good at solving these fascinating, difficult problems. It's not just for the good of your company or the good of the fashion industry. Without a free and safe open internet, we don't have democracy, we don't have global trade, we don't have a free market economy. These are all things that are essential for our Western way of life and for your companies as well. So pretty high stakes working on this. If there's any, flag me down later. I know I sound a little scary, but I'm really nice. And yeah, like I said, I have a stack of business cards. I'm happy to be helpful however I can. And thanks for having me here. You rule.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you.
All right. So, we've already heard the metaverse word mentioned multiple times today when I didn't even know it was going to be mentioned. And it's really important for us to really understand this space. So I would like to introduce two amazing young women who I encountered at the Victoria and Albert Museum a few months ago at London Fashion Week. And this was a fashion presentation unlike anything I had seen before. I nipped over there, I think it was on a Sunday, and the V&A Museum was packed with people. And all I knew is I was meeting these two women from Ouroboros. And I got there, and there's this like massive crowd of people. And there was this robot with a garment made of crystals or something that were growing. And some of you may have seen in the lunch venue a shape of a head. And I think it should be growing, though unfortunately it seems like we might have had a contamination incident at the drinks last night. So it might not be growing as we expected. But here to explain the first of a couple of conversations around the metaverse are Alyssa and Paula. Please welcome Ouroboros.
Okay, I'm not sure if there's marks, but I guess it's here. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Imran, for having us. We're really, really excited to be here. So, the origin of our name comes from one of the most compelling symbols across the world. It's been the subject of awe and wonder for many millennia. The alchemical symbol of the snake biting its own tail, the Ouroboros, representing a continuous cycle of renewal and reinvention. Just like the alchemists, we use innovation to ignite a sense of curiosity that invites others in, nurturing hope and joy for our generation by challenging the narrative of doom and dystopia so often being portrayed by popular culture when envisioning our future.
And this cycle of change is now relevant more than ever, as we embark upon a precipice of a new world. As we've all been talking today, we're merging our universe with the metaverse. However, fashion in our time, which is said to be a mirror of society, did not reflect any of these monumental shifts until now. So we are here to embody this change as the first digital natives of our generation. We actually met between the physical avant-garde design and digital fashion communication. Seeing the many different technological and scientific advances around us, we desired to create a unique symbiosis of both for our generation and everyone else to remember this pivotal moment in society and fashion. In other words, paving a new aesthetic and redefining how we imagine clothing, consumption, distribution, and utility.
This statement of positive change was integral to us reimagining a utopian future, and it's shifting how we identify ourselves within a fragile and fast-paced ecosystem. Just like identity, our experience of reality is becoming a spectrum, from physical to mixed reality to digital. Particularly relevant with COVID's impact on our industry as we begin to critically understand the need for alternative and sustainable production. After all, our industry produces 92 million tons of garment waste on a yearly basis. So therefore, we must change sustainability from its current function as a simple buzzword to transforming it into a core business value.
So, as designers, we are considering the broader ideas of ecological consciousness and mortality that lie at the core of sustainability to combat some of the biggest downfalls of our industry, including material waste. We present Ouroboros as the first fashion house to merge science and technology for both physical and digital worlds, realizing the seemingly impossible without innovation by mimicry.
Jane Benyus from the Biomimicry Institute described this as an innovation that is a practice that learns from and mimics nature, finding hope along the way. The Biomimicry collection that we launched in January takes this on quite literally. Our couture pieces grow on the body over 6 to 12 hours through a crystallization process that you may or also may not see here today at BOF Voices. Pardon me. So this happens through an oxidization process that occurs on the body through a receptive material where the crystals form a floral-like pattern, growing uniquely to the wearer each time. The designs live and fall apart on the body, existing in an entirely ephemeral state in which the wearer must cherish the given moment before it passes. This elevates our couture from a three-dimensional object to a fourth-dimensional subjective experience of time and form. The crystals grow uniquely just once, dictating their own design, and as with any organic matter, can never be identically recreated.
So if the pieces are not contaminated with alcohol when you party too much, they would actually metamorph in shape, size, and color, transforming in synchronicity with the wearer. So for the first time, you get to experience a garment's performance of life and death. This completely recontextualizes garments and our relationship with them as a form of life to be appreciated and respected. Not only that is important for us as individuals, but the whole entire global ecosystem. As the core intent of our innovation is to reinterpret the relationship with sustainability. It is a tale of life, maturity, and mortality in which we must accept the cycle's finitude. It is becoming increasingly clear in our industry and in others just how important a role of environmental and ecological social responsibility that will play in the future of all organizations, especially within the retail industry. So acting responsibly is no longer a choice for us. We cannot carry the weight and the consequences of overproduced clothing that is ending up in landfills. And I'm sure you've read the recent COP26 report that only clarified that.
So this is why we created Biomimicry as a dual collection, with both physical couture and digital only ready-to-wear, moving away from the binary to a fluidity that reflects the two realms and the duality we live in, and therefore becoming truly sustainable. By upgrading our ready-to-wear to digital, we were able to maintain the integrity and innovation of the couture whilst furthering the vision with a far wider audience than ever before, at no material cost. Biomimicry is therefore drawn together by the same concept and story, but they're also sharing an idea that the physical and the digital can live in an artistic identity of their own. After all, the digital could really be leveled up with the concept of growing garments through technology. So here, the magic we saw in nature could be rendered. Our materials came from deep-sea creatures merged with Murano glass tendrils and were animated to move like mycelium. From coats structured with seedlings that have a life of their own, to entities inspired by sci-fi films like Annihilation or Avatar, or mathematical formulas like fractals or Fibonacci. Our digital collection was a romantic take on our environment. This we refer to as nature tech, using technology to become closer to nature and inspiring others to see that these are not contradictory or opposing forces, but rather ones that live in harmony with one another and can learn from each other too. After all, nature is the greatest designer.
As an example of this, we'd love to invite you to experience this on yourselves by scanning the QR code on our installation to be part of this. It will lead you to a digital-only garment from our biomimicry collection, which is made in mind for the world without physics. So the dress you will see is made out of 100 metallic floating petals, revealing and concealing the body like a carnivorous plant, which was our inspiration, attracting its prey, and hence we named it Venus Trap. And it unfolds as you move through the phone camera. So this garment has now been worn by over 2.5 million people and counting, whilst totaling to 97% less waste than one plain physical t-shirt produced. This presents a window of how seamless digital fashion will soon be operating, enabling us to change form in the real world with technology, which will only be furthered by the use of mixed reality and wearables. So statistics already show that the AR industry is expected to be worth 85 billion by next year. We hope this will open up opportunities for exploring your identity and also gender fluid dressing options for all shapes and sizes of bodies.
To take a step back, as some of you may be less familiar with digital fashion, it's actually already existed for several decades in different forms, from 80s CGI costumes found in Tron or the Terminator, to skins in video games now infamous, such as Lara Croft or Final Fantasy. It's only really now that it's breaking into mainstream fashion, and we're here talking about it at BOF Voices. Biomimicry was our way of bridging the gap between a digitally savvy type who spends most of their time and resources online and a fashion enthusiast. When 1 in 3 young women already admits to wearing a garment a maximum of once or twice before considering it old or outdated, our unique ability to provide digital garments and assets for videos, images, and avatars at zero ecological impact satisfies our coveted new audience's desire for dopamine dressing and instant gratification. It is the digital dawn, in which the virtual presence is as important as our physical one, and customers are willing to spend on personalization. As many here will know, trends have become micro-trends at an unparalleled speed in which keeping up with the growing influencer economy is nearly impossible.
We believe that digital fashion can be so much more than a marketing tool for rendering out digital doubles of existing clothes and trainers. We've already seen that to be done many times, and so many digital assets are being generated with little understanding of the digital space or interest in tastemaking in this evolving digital culture. So in the metaverse, the only limitation to your style is your own imagination. If you think about it, a lot of people already buy clothing for social media only to wear them once and never again. So why not wear a digital garment that is infinitely more exciting and rare and engaging? Fashion is the natural progression of us exploring the look and the feel of digital luxury.
So whilst it's important to learn from tradition, in order to create boundary-breaking design, we're excited to introduce a new form of craft, truly making a breakthrough in the fashion status quo with digital craftsmanship. By being mostly self-taught, we were able to establish this novel craft by also observing it through constant inspiration and a state of wonder. Through endless hours of experimentation and learning, this allowed us to develop a unique pipeline that is, similar to our physical assets, impossible to recreate. This establishes our new form of luxury, one that is entirely free of the constraints of the material world.
And although fashion industry is new to the concept of digital craftsmanship and seeing how much skill, time, and knowledge it takes to create digital fashion a luxury, it's been crucial to us to establish this as a new craftsmanship for the whole industry to navigate through the flow of endless assets created in the metaverse or for the metaverse. So we really nurture like-minded talent from the vibrant communities we initiate to build a multi-layered vision of digital luxury with different narratives and backgrounds to actively let shape the identity of our evolving brand. So understanding that this is a huge privilege that's been previously limited to certain geographic locations, we open up the community to be accessible to anyone with the interest of making a more positive, hopeful future. With this ideology and creativity, we'll bring innovation within fashion as well as other important facets of digital culture like gaming and art and performance. So the possibilities are endless.
We seek to evolve craftsmanship and luxury beyond its current form, daring to redesign the fashion industry in the hopes and dreams as well as expectations and needs of our generation. Blurring the line between physical and digital to have true immersiveness by weaving new narratives into technology and innovation through the medium of fashion. Because what is technology without a soul? These utopian dreams fulfill an important function as they serve as a global reminder that we do not have to be complacent with the world we currently inhabit.
As pioneers, both virtually and materially, we hope to enable an imaginative and expansive without barriers and ultimately a 21st century experience to share with all of you, promoting values of ethical production, accessibility, and diversity by breaking the conventions of fashion wearability and aesthetics, starting with our growing couture and zero-waste digital collections. So we hope this has triggered your curiosity to look towards a more positive future, because collectively shifting our focus for innovating for sustainability can become our greatest shared legacy.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I am going to play a little video now. Oh. You guys used a lot of words that many people here don't understand. And actually this year, 3 of the most top words from the Collins Dictionary, I don't know if you saw this, were metaverse, NFT, and crypto. Right? And so to explain what these words mean, we're going to screen a 2-minute explainer from the BOF show. We did an episode on the metaverse, and each episode has a 2-minute explainer, and then we're going to go back into the metaverse for our next talk. But thank you so much, and here's a little clip. All right,
thank you.
As the world stayed home during the pandemic, there was still somewhere to go to get dressed up. Welcome to the metaverse. The term may come from science fiction, but the business opportunities in this fast-evolving convergence of digital and physical worlds are real. The metaverse has grown out of gaming, where players already spend over $100 billion a year on virtual goods. 3 billion people, more than 1/3 of the world's population, regularly play video games. 46% of gamers are women. And across generations, people prefer video games over movies and TV shows, making gaming the world's leading form of entertainment. Dressing avatars has come a long way from battleground beginnings. As gaming emerges as a lucrative channel for luxury brands to reach new customers, screenwear is the new streetwear. A growing trend in this new fashion space, matching real-life purchases with a digital twin. New breed creatives make playful tributes to their favorite brands. Real-world cities embrace virtual fashion shows and virtual department stores. So don't write this off as a blip. It's a game changer. And we cannot yet know where it might go. Demand for one-off NFTs, unique certified digital assets, is soaring. In fashion, NFTs are the couture of the metaverse, where the unfettered creations of digital artisans can outprice those of global brands. And hyped assets, driven by scarcity, are crypto status symbols. The upside? Measurable planetary savings. Production of a digital garment emits 97% less CO2 than a physical one. The downside? Minting and mining NFTs requires skyrocketing energy consumption in the real world. The shift to more environmentally efficient methods can't come fast enough. Yet, virtual fashion facilitates the expression of multiple selves. in a virtual world where brands recreate the experiences that define fashion culture, while not forgetting our eternal joy of getting dressed up in real life.
So now we move from virtual fashion to virtual art. Digital assets have existed for decades in the gaming industry, but the ability to tokenize assets by putting them on blockchains has created new potential across a variety of sectors. As you saw in that video, NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, broke out from niche crypto communities and into the mainstream. Research conducted by BOF Insights, a new research and analysis unit at the Business of Fashion, found that between 40 to 60% of general US population aged between 15 and 56 are already familiar with the concept of NFTs. And NFT sales soared by more than 700% in Q3 of this year to more than $10 billion. But will this boom last? And how should the metaverse operate in the future? Lady Phoenix is the founder of Yes Universe, the largest network of virtual museums in the metaverse, and believes strongly in the need for an open metaverse. Right now, Lady Phoenix will be joined by Joe Hage, co-founder of Henny, a tech firm that works with artists across publishing and film, and cryptocurrency startup Ledger's chief experience officer, Ian Rogers, will also join us. Sadly, 2 of the 3 guests in this panel weren't able to be with us due to the changing travel regulations. But we didn't want to miss this talk, so we're going to take it fully virtual, which somehow seems appropriate. So here are, let's see if we can bring them on screen. We're waiting, but hopefully they'll appear soon. There they are.
I'm here.
Ian, can you hear me? Lady Phoenix, Joe?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Amazing. Ian, you're in Paris?
I'm in the metaverse.
You're in the metaverse. Okay, you're all in the metaverse, right? Okay, I forgot.
I'm in Paris, yes.
Yeah. Lady Phoenix, you're in Miami. And Joe, you're in London.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we can all hear you and see you great. Hopefully you can hear us. We're really sorry that you weren't able to be with us here in person, but thrilled that we made this virtual conversation work at short notice. So, Ian, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Cool. Well, thank you. Hey, guys, great to see you. I'm really sorry I'm not there. I love Voices. I love the Soho Farmhouse. But welcome to my living room, which I think is really what we are here to talk about. I mean, we've heard this word metaverse. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is helping to explain what the metaverse might be to people. But I'm curious to ask our panelists as a starting point, from your perspective, what is the metaverse? Lady Phoenix, why don't you take the first stab at an explanation?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there with all of you guys. Definitely have heard so much about the Soho Farmhouse and this Voices conference. Yeah, the metaverse, I think for me, because I'm approaching it from the point of freedom dreaming, I think for me, the metaverse essentially, commonly is a place that we can all get together, inside of a virtual space where we can exchange ideas, agreements, and also goods. So it has to have an e-commerce or a financial layer, but it also has to have a social agreement layer where we can make new families, right? New agreements and new homes, new societies, essentially.
Thanks. Joe?
Yeah, no, I agree with Lady Phoenix. On one hand, the metaverse, we've all, during the pandemic, become part of it because it's just doing Zoom calls and all existing in the digital world. But the metaverse, as it's used by Zuckerberg and others, is a place where everyone can hang out and actually have 3D avatars and go around and experience. It's a parallel universe to our current world. And as Lady Phoenix implies, there's also a very important element of it where people can carry things around in the universe that have value, and that goes back to NFTs, where there's ownership rights in the metaverse, where you can actually own bits of land there and own your clothes and own other things. So it's just a parallel universe. Yeah. Sorry.
I think for me, what I would like to share with the audience is that I don't think it's necessarily a 3D space that kind of mimics the space that we live in real life. I think as we're saying here, we've all been living in a metaverse. We're appearing in a metaverse now. I mean, where we are, but it doesn't really matter where we are. The thing that I find most interesting personally is that we spend so much of our attention in this virtual borderless world. And the thing I always try to remind people is, I experience, I mean, a lot of people, especially people who are roughly my age, I'm 49, turning 50, who can't get over the fact that it's not physical. Yeah, but it's not physical. I mean, okay, it's art, but yeah, but it's not physical. And to that I would say, well, that's simply generational. We experience life in one consciousness. We don't have a digital consciousness and a physical consciousness. If you, as I always say, when you get irritated reading comments on Twitter, you don't get digital irritated. You get irritated in that same place in your brain that you get irritated when someone pulls out in front of you in traffic. We have just one consciousness that we experience life through. And when we're spending so much of our attention with a screen, and we're talking to people where it doesn't matter where they are, when we're looking at Instagram or TikTok or Discord, or it truly doesn't matter. When I'm enjoying work from an artist like Pac, who I don't even know who he, she, they is, it doesn't really matter where in the world they are. Yet our politics are fundamentally geographic. We draw a line on the earth around a group of people. We ask them, one person who represents their ideals. And the thing that I keep, puzzling around is that I think these two worlds are fundamentally incompatible. And a lot of what we experience comes from that, comes from the fact that these two worlds are incompatible. If you've heard me speak at Voices, 5 or 6 years ago, then you've heard me say that I believe the internet is moving us from, mass media to a mass of niches. I think that that just continues, and we become more and more tribal. And so much of what we experience about the ways that the internet is changing culture is about that move from mass to niche, because we find our tribes online, and everything will be digitized. I experienced music being digitized. I worked at LVMH with the industry going digital from a retail perspective, but make no mistake about it, other worlds, such as fashion and money, will also be digitized. It's inevitable, a matter of where on the time horizon. So I think Lady Phoenix, I wanted to ask you, within that, I know you spend a lot of time thinking about what is that society that we're heading towards, and so I'm curious, what's your hope or potentially concerns for that society as we live in these physical kind of boundaried worlds, but we spend our time in the ones that lack boundaries?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I want to wrap it into something that flagged when you were speaking, saying that things are primarily moving towards tribal and niche. And yes, I do believe that. But I also believe that the metaverse will make available experiences that we can share together through meshing societies or tribes into a place. For example, I'm here in Miami for Art Basel by invitation as Museum and Filmgate to exhibit a project that I made for Breonna Taylor and her family. When Breonna passed away, was murdered, there was a lot of news about her that was false. But because it came from authorities, right? Authorities, media authorities, folks believed that to be the truth of who she was and what happened. I'm not someone who is going to be on the street protesting. It's just not my way. But I am a creative person. I'm an artist and I'm a creative entrepreneur. And so with myself and my buddy Sutu, who's like a legend in the XR world, AR, VR world, I phoned him up one day and I said, hey, I think what's happening is really messed up. I'm looking at her little sister in particular and seeing the amount of devastation in her face every time I turn on the news. I began following her on Instagram as a part of her virtual community and noticed that she was receiving death threats, gender slurs, and I wanted to create a safe space for her. And so I bring this up because we, created a digital or virtual garden for her called Brianna's Garden. You can check it out at briannasgarden.com. And it's a place where actually everyone can come, right? So I do think there will be niches and tribes, but I also think there will be an oasis, so to speak. And in that oasis, people will find their common language, but also be able to create new languages. I think that within the tribes and niches, we still need unity. We still need to be able to come together. And it just so happens that, death is a common human experience. I think it will also be a common avatar experience in the future, or a virtual being experience in the future, and we'll need insurance for that. But we'll need a place where we can grieve together, because the world is changing rapidly and the vocabulary and the understanding isn't there, but the emotional intelligence is there. And sometimes there's only that when there's no words. And so, just pushing back on that a little bit. I think there will be places that we all gather and be together. One of my concerns, though, is that the metaverse we create, specifically the one that Facebook, Meta, is looking to create, my greatest concern is that it will operate like a closed society, that there will be certain environments within the metaverse that are going to be off limits to people because they don't pass the cool factor, or the financial factor, or the good looking factor, whatever the factor is. So that's my greatest concern. I believe that the metaverse should be completely open. People already in the physical world have places that they can't go for those similar reasons, but the metaverse should be that one place that everyone can go. So that's my concern, and my solution is that it stay open. If you want to have your own private birthday party or whatever in the metaverse and it's invite only, okay, or your own fashion show and it's invite only, okay, that's fine. But if it's a general place that people can share and should share, we should look more to creating worlds or environments that bring people together, right? Where art and technology can bring people together instead of segregating them. We have enough of that historically, and I think, should be looking towards how to do the complete opposite in our brand new world. We all have a bit of the artist in us. We all have the ability to make this new world exceptional and beautiful and wonderful, and put a bit of ourselves in there, but also put a bit of our greatest hope for humanity in there. And that looks like an open metaverse to me.
Joe, I'm curious your thoughts following on that.
I agree with Lady Fee. I mean, just for members of the audience who obviously know varying degrees about NFTs and crypto, the whole of the NFT space is created as a result of the creation of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, as you all know, was really a revolution against central control by the state, because the creator of Bitcoin didn't believe in fiat currency and governments controlling money, and believed in a decentralized way of people trusting each other and working together. And so that was the creation of Bitcoin, and so it's fundamentally decentralized. And over time, Ethereum was born, and then NFTs were born. Now, NFTs are really a revolution for me anyway, and for all of us, and I'm so excited about it, because NFTs are really about, the revolution in my mind is in three formats. One is, it's a revolution in ownership. So now, for the first time, one can easily prove that one owns a digital asset. And because you own it, you can sell it, you can enjoy it, you can show it off, even though somebody else might have a copy of it because it's a digital asset. So that's a huge revolution. The other revolution is in smart contracts and exchanges, which means the ability with which people can buy and sell them and trade them, and also the rights that you can have within those NFTs, whether it's a right to attend a fashion show, a pop concert, whether it's the rights to buy things. And the third revolution for me, in my experience of NFTs, which has been very extensive and intensive for the past year or so, is community. And that's the most shocking thing for me, is that people often think, oh, we'll drop an NFT and we'll just make a bit of money, but it's all about community. And as Ian said, it to some extent is tribal. There are some people who only want particular, there are some people who love Bitcoin but hate Ethereum. There are some people, so community is everything. But the real battle that's raging on in the metaverse, which is the one that Lady Fee's talking about, is a fundamental battle about whether the community controls itself or whether it's owned, as in Bitcoin's case, by a government. But actually what's the fear is it'll be owned by a big corporation, and the individuals will run around in this parallel universe, which is a parallel world where you can do everything you can do in the real world, but it's owned by a corporation. And, you know, we all have our own views about, you know, whatever our views are about corporations. But I believe very strongly, like Lady Fee, that the metaverse will be far better if it aggregates and the summation of everyone's contribution to it. And in the communities that I've developed inside Henny, I'm shocked at how intelligent the people are and how fantastic people work together in places like Discord and in other places. So I really believe in the community, and I believe and I hope that, as Lady Fee says, the open metaverses, which are controlled and regulated by the community rather than by a big corporation. But the fight is on, really. You know, from Facebook to Microsoft, everyone wants to control the world or the universe, the metaverse. So it's quite a tricky moment for us. But it's a very exciting time for fashion, anyway, for other reasons, because I think the next huge wave in NFTs will be fashion, fueled by the metaverse and people's ability to wear it and show it off and walk around in the metaverse. And, you know, so far the NFTs have boomed art and collectibles and sport, but we're on the edge of a fantastic boom, I believe, in fashion NFTs. Sorry, I've talked so much.
No, I think you touched on a bunch of things there and we don't have a lot of time, so I'm glad that you touched on a number of things that we need to. I would like to give to the audience, and if I could, I'd like to zoom out, assuming that many in the audience know the buzzwords, but they're not a part of these communities yet. And a couple things. One, first of all, when you hear a word, NFT, you really need to think of it as just a primitive. The same way, maybe 20 years ago we would talk about website. It's not a specific thing. It's not just a JPEG. As Joe says, it's actually the ability to have digital ownership, and that's a primitive which will unlock all kinds of things. We lead digital lives, and we will have digital collectibles. We will have digital fashion, and things that are digital will have value. The physical photos I had hanging on my wall in 1995 had value to me, but the photos that I post on Instagram, many years later, had a different kind of value to me, and that same transformation is what's going to happen here. Also, the activities that you take will be recorded in a different way, because the activities that you make are on-chain and discoverable. In other words, when you do something, there is proof that you did it that lives on the blockchain, and that will become part of your identity. And I think that, as Joe said, I agree that there's a revolution coming in what this means for brands. In many ways, the internet, which has been this revolution of information, it took away ownership. It took away ownership of whether it's compact disc and DVDs, but also our identities. The more is known about us by Facebook than our spouse. Story many times, and on this stage, from people like Chris over the past years, but this ability to have digital property gives us some of that back. And it unlocks so much, for that to happen. I think let's look at music just as an example. We've kind of lost this notion of record labels over the past 20 years because, what record label is Drake on, if any? Okay. The reality is, though, is that, this world that Joe is describing is actually a boon for brands. I really encourage everyone to read, if you search on the internet, Atom Bomb Squad white paper, the hundreds, it's ADAM. You'll find a long, blog post basically by Bobby Kim from the hundreds, that talks about, the role that the internet played in the creation of his brand 25 years ago, and, where he sees this kind of digital identity going now. And I think it's super relevant to what's happening with fashion, and what does, creativity, ownership and part of a community look like online? I think that Joe's right that this will be a revolution for brands. The question I'd like to ask to both of you is, I was going to point out, I was talking with a brand yesterday who was talking about, buying some land in a metaverse. And, my question to them was, have you spent any time in that metaverse? The answer was no. They'd read about it, and it was a big press release, and, maybe we should do it. And what I used to say at LVMH is, you're not allowed to talk to me about technology you haven't used. Right? So if you read about Snapchat in the Wall Street Journal, that doesn't mean you're now allowed to come talk to me about Snapchat. Please go download it, use it for a week, and then let's have a conversation about it. And I'd say the same thing to everyone in the audience about this. Joe referenced something which is, what he's discovered about the way that collecting NFTs has made him feel. And I feel that same thing. It wasn't until I'd had a meaningful value exchange with a completely unknown NFT artist that I felt like I understood something about NFTs. Because as human beings, we love a value exchange with an artist that we love. And so my encouragement to the audience is dive in, try something, go through it, see then you'll understand what it is and what it isn't, because there's lots of things that it is not yet. So what I wanted to ask, Lady Phoenix as a starting point is, what would you recommend if I'm assuming that much of the audience is kind of aware, but not immersed. What would you recommend that they do today to become more familiar and to kind of, further whatever they do into this new world, which is inevitably coming toward us?
Yeah, if they're interested in fashion, I would say check out Crypto Fashion Week. We started Crypto Fashion Week in February of this year. It was largely successful because folks like Ouroboros and Luxo and Dematerialized and Artifact and all kinds of other folks who are creative and looking to further the conversation around these changes that Joe brought up around the revolution, were doing so through what they were wearing and creating in the metaverse. And so I would say look up what, the conversations we had at Crypto Fashion Week. If you're very technical and sort of really want to get into the nuts and bolts straight away, find the NFT Bible and dive straight into that. I think those are two really good places to start. You can, if you're super nerdy, you can go and look up all the white papers. Ian, you referenced one earlier. There's the Bitcoin white paper, which is a starting point for a lot of people. I think those are three good places to start. And then I would say, you know what? Create an NFT and mint one on OpenSea or Zora. Actually, just start. You don't have to be an incredible artist to create an NFT. You can create an NFT from a doodle, from a poem, from a jingle, from you humming. You can literally create an NFT from anything. And then be thinking about the technology as you're creating this. Thinking about ways that the technology can be improved, or thinking about ways that the technology can serve you better. I think, this whole space and everything we want, even in brands, right? Brands have to realize now that, their clients or customers or fans or whomever are really driving this next iteration of life, right? They're in the driver's seat. And if we don't have if we're not truly in community with these brands as kind of co-creators, then we're not going to have the results that we want in Web3. So those would be my recommendations.
Thank you so much. Hey, Joe, we need to wrap up. Do you have any advice on where to begin for the audience before we close it up?
I'll keep it very short. I agree with everything Lady Fee says. Essentially, you want to read as much as you can. Most NFT communities are on Twitter or on Discord, so they're worth checking out. And it's really, I'll repeat the point that was implicitly made by Ian, which is to really get into it. It's great to galvanize the mind by actually trying to buy and sell an NFT. So fiddle around, go to OpenSea and just have a look at what's available and just keep an eye on it. But as soon as you buy and sell something, it changes your whole attitude to things and makes you want to understand more. But I won't go on because I know we're short of time. Thanks for listening in.
Yeah, and thanks everybody. Thank you, Joe. Security is important in this world. You know, we sell a product called Ledger that keeps you safe in the world of NFTs. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to any one of us. Imran, thanks always for having us. I'm so sorry that we're not there in person. And I love and miss you all.
It was awesome to have you here virtually. Somehow, I think it's appropriate. I have to say, though, it's not the same. And so I hope we can bring you here physically next year, because right now it's just not the same. But it was definitely better than nothing, and I'm so grateful that you all carved out the time to join us. And Lady Phoenix, we never got to meet in person. And I know I know you live in the metaverse, but I'd love to meet you in person one day too. So thank you everyone from Paris, Miami, and London. Great to talk to you, and thank you for all your insights. To learn more about what the metaverse means for fashion, please be sure to check out our 107-page report by BOF Insights, which addresses everything you need to know about fashion and the metaverse. And for our community here in Oxfordshire, we will be hosting a salon this evening on the potential of the metaverse, hosted by one of the authors of the report, our very own Rahul Malik, and founder of Ordre, Simon Locke. That will be a fascinating conversation. So everyone who wants to nerd out on that, I know there's some of you out there, make sure you check out Simon and Rahul tonight. Who missed dancing during the pandemic? I did. I used to dance a bit in my living room on my own every day, and my boyfriend would kind of laugh at me. But like, dancing is such a big part of being a human. It's one of the most human things that we can do. But recently I was confronted with a question that I hadn't really thought about, is the role that artificial intelligence and human instinct to express ourselves through dance can come together. And according to Wayne McGregor, the multi-award-winning resident choreographer of the Royal Ballet, they can. So Wayne will shortly be giving us a live performance joined by dancers Rebecca Bassett-Graham and Jordan Bridge. And after that, he'll explain his thoughts about the intersection of AI and dance in conversation with BOF's editor-at-large, Tim Blanks. But first, let's welcome Wayne and two of his dancers.
Hi. Hello. Hi. Well, we are here in real life, which is great. And we've all missed that live interactive presence, right? That sense of community, that transfer of energy between people and people, between, in our case, dancer and choreographer. You know, I grew up in Manchester in the 70s. And my only access really to the arts was through movies. And I fell in love with John Travolta at 7. Where I really felt that there was this kind of incredible like passion and resilience and excitement about the way in which he moved. A bit later on, I saw the movie Fame, and you know, it was the first time I really saw anybody who had the job of a choreographer, Debbie Allen, with a big stick at the front of the room, counting 5, 6, 7, 8. And I think many people think that is the role of dance and choreographers now today, that actually that's what it is. And of course, that's one part of the way in which we express ourselves physically, the way in which we physically think. So what we wanted to do before we talk to Tim is I just love to show you a different way of thinking physically. You know, Tim and Imran asked if I would make something live for you in 7 minutes, which I'm going to have a little go at. So we're going to have a little Business of Fashion world premiere in 7 minutes. What I'd love you to notice about this is about this real-time interaction between bodies. It's about how bodies think physically. It's about this non-verbal means of communication that we all know about, but we take so much for granted, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. And then maybe just zooming out, thinking about how this form of dance making has application in robotics, or has application in AI, has application in avatars, how you might be able to think about a choreographic process extrapolated in another dimension. So we're just going to pretend you're not here. We're going to work for about 7 minutes, and then we're going to have a premiere, and then we're going to talk about it. I can't attest to the quality of this premiere. All I can say is this is what we're doing. Okay. Great, so we're going to have a little start, shall we? So, Bex, can you just take this elbow? I'm going to come through this way. So, yeah, through, open a little moment through and down. Yeah. Jordan, can you kind of come across and over this way? Across and over. Can you come back in your hips this way and through and back? Yeah, back with a turn. Chunk, that, yeah, great, fantastic. Can you go pull back over on this side, this hand, and Bex, can you tip? Yep, exactly. Okay, do you want to go back? Cool. Here you go, ready? And one, shong. Dak, deek, dak, wap, at tip. Brilliant. From there, can you bring this knee around and down and tap the foot on the back? Just tap it at the back. Yeah. Can you go to her hips? Go to her hips, a quick turn. A quick turn. A backwards rond de jambe and a moment up. It's like a little backwards rond. Yeah, even more rond. Rond up. Okay, do you want to go back? Cool, something in that zone. Okay, nice and easy. Chung. Chung. Great, backwards rond de jambe. Backwards rond de jambe. Down, fantastic. Can you go, Jordan, can you come across this way? What do you think? If this is a line, can you go underneath the line? Yeah, underneath the line and finish in an elbow. Something in the back of the head. Yeah, back of the head. And then can you pull out and long into Beck's hips? Brilliant. Okay, should we go back? Fantastic. Bit by bit, adding on. Here we go. Change. Whew. Great. Chom. Backwards rond de jambe. Turn. Fantastic. Line. Along. Underneath. One bump. Turn. Open. Hips. Jump. Bex, what do you think? So from there, something that kind of just has a little shape in the hips in the back, even more hip related, more hip related. Fantastic. Shoulder blade, shoulder blade, shoulder blade, deep dive. More fist, more fist. Great. Okay. From there, what do you think? Can you where can you lean? This way? Whoom, how's that? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So just from there, just from that little lean moment off. A little lean. Whoom. Deep dive, and off. Right, great. Have you got any freedom here? This leg, yeah, fantastic. And push so the legs come up and open. So we're going to push and the legs come up and open. I was thinking, Bex, great. I was thinking more this way. Chomp, back, back, great. Okay, can you head, sequence the head and come through this way? Head, and pull Jordan, pull him. Jordan, can you go watch the screen? It's a tiny space. Here we go. From there, can you extend that leg this way? Yeah, développé it in this way. Both of you turn backwards that way. Other way, Bex. Other way. Backwards. It's going this way. This way. Should we go back?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Can anybody help if nobody's here? You can join in if you want. Yeah. Here we go. Let's have a go. Here we go. Let's have a go. Here we go. Ready? Go. Nice and good. Nice and easy. One. Check it out. Duck. Take. Do that. Deep, dak, backwards rond de jambe. One. Chuck. Hey, fantastic. Little hips. Whoom. Way. Around. Off. Whoom. Leg. Open. Back. Through. Down. Round. Backwards turn. Fantastic. Well remembered. Okay, great. From there. Go. Okay. We're doing all right. I think we might make more premieres live. It feels good. Yeah, it feels good to do that. We're going to do that more. Okay, from there, let's just forget for a second. Let's both go in a parallel position this way. Let's just think about a little moment where I'm going to go rolling my arms and open like this. Watch. So I'm going down, like almost like I'm folding my arms and sending it open. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to go this arm, and change this way around. Yes, I'm going here, change, and down. Yeah, I'm staying here into a first. I'm going over the top, and do a shoulder and a head. Both shoulders, head. How's that? Something like that? So, what do you think? Open, bang, change. Right arm, back, turn. Yeah, shoulder blade away. Yeah. So, shoulder blade away. From there, let's just do this. Take this leg, beat along. Bend along, just like that. I'm going to stay on this back foot. I'm going to turn onto it. Okay, one more time. Nice and easy. All right, here we go. Ready? And chomp. Voila. Yak, dak. day. Underneath. Jack, yes, beat, beat, backwards, other way. Dang, dang, day, da, day. Jack. Oh, you did that right, didn't you? Sorry. Yeah, exactly. Yes, why don't we just stay here? Just stay here, with your shoulder blades and away. Last thing, we're nearly there for this world premiere. Shoulder blades and away. Shoulder blades and away. Okay? How's that? All right? Right. Should we go let's mark from the beginning. Yeah, let's just mark from the beginning. Here we go. So just mark. Bada, da, change. Quiet. Bam. Bada, da. Do that. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So, do that. Yeah. Well, this is mark. Away, off legs, just change. Around. Bada, da. Legs. Okay. Tick-a-dack. Da-da-dack. Tick-a-dack. Unison. Da-da-dack. Da-dack. Tick-dack. Okay, we're there, right? Do that. Dack. Beat. Back. Change. Balance. Tip. Okay, how's that? Right, cool, let's do it. Okay, world premiere, here comes. Can you start the phrase? She'll do the phrase, you do the duet, you do the phrase. Okay, our business of fashion world premiere in 7 minutes. Here it goes. Are you ready for this? Here we go. So guys, this challenges us about questions about how do we remember, what do you see, what is the kinesthetic intelligence that's happening at play, what's the embodied cognition, all of these things that actually are applying to other things in a minute we're going to talk about. I just wanted you to see in action as we do it. So what do you reckon, guys? Yeah. Is this the quickest premiere of your entire life?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Let's go.
We love that. Okay, here it is. So Bex, really just, yeah, now we're in performance mode. Yeah, we're now, let's just have a look. This little invention we made, thinking with a body, to the duet into Jordan on his own. Okay, here goes. Hang on. Bit of Gaika. Thank you, Gaika. Dancers, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Woo! Guys, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have to say, I am inside me.
Are you going to dance now?
I'm just going to say I am totally obsessed with Wayne's World. I just cannot. I mean, to be able to digitally map a dancer's moves seems to me like the perfect confluence of art and science. And you talk about holding memory. And it just makes me think, imagine you could have captured Nijinsky, you could have captured Nureyev, I mean, for all time. So I'm a complete layman, so you have to explain to me what this means.
Well, I think it means that we all have this amazing individual physical signature. So the way you're sitting now expresses something of you. The way in which your weight sits, the way in which you use your body in 3D, the way in which you organize your backspace tells me something about you. So in the same way, earlier we talked about clothes being almost an archive, a golden thread into the past. This sense that actually memory and resonance has come from the giving and handing of clothes that you then wear 100 years later. This is absolutely what the archive of a body is. This is absolutely what we carry with us. We carry our somatic experiences with us, and they make that you individually you. There's a you-ness to you, which is built from all those things, and some of them might be traumatizing. So I know that lots of people really hate dancing because they had really awful experiences at school where they had to be a tree and be a candle. And they, therefore, think about dance only in terms of those somatic experiences. They don't connect that with them being free and being out in a club or where music just pours through you and you just dance and express. So I think there's something really interesting about this like palimpsest of the human body, which holds resonance and ideas and kind of a physical literacy. One of the reasons I wanted to start today is that, you know, the body is the most technologically literate thing that we have. You know, this is a body in its extreme eloquence. This is a body that is capable of extremely beautiful connection and collaboration, but only if we notice and recognize the things that the body can do, the power of the body. So I was curious about the story earlier on about the guy who stopped the suitcase going in that moment, right? That is a bias that can't help but come out. You know, this is a bias which is even precognitive in a way. It's something which just is a flash that is demonstrated physically. And what is the power of somebody then looking at you and actually seeing you and actually communicating without words, the whole basis of dance, this non-verbal means of communication, to make you perhaps just reflect in a moment. But we don't do that enough. We don't use our body and the power of our body to you know, express and develop communication in a way that we can. And I think one of the things that we've been trying to do is identify what is a physical signature. How do you recognize a physical signature? And how can we map that in other dimensions that we can be able to build systems that in some way replicate it? So there's an idea that we've been working with Google on a living archive. And this living archive is trained on thousands of hours of movement movement that I've made over the years. And apart from the fact that it can create in the style of you, which, you know, is that interesting, is that not interesting? There's something interesting about the endeavor. What it can do is it can create in the style of a particular dancer with their particular energy and writing. So you can imagine a future then in which you can give Nureyev new dances to dance, Sylvie Guillem new dances to dance, dances that they never danced before. And for me, that's really fascinating because it gets, first of all, to the heart of what makes you you. It comes from that center, and then it's translated through technology into another dimension.
See, the thing in fashion, the transience of fashion is part of its sort of melancholic appeal. You know, the transience of beauty. When you think of dance, your last show at the Royal Opera House with the Dante Project was the last time your male muse, Edward Watson, would dance for you. It was absolutely ravishingly beautiful, but it was melancholic. And you thought of the transience of his career. And that's what appeals to me about the idea of the living archive, that nothing dies. You are holding memory forever. So that feels to me, that's when I talk about art and science, it feels to me like something almost mechanical turned to this absolutely exalted purpose.
But I mean, I think also there's something really poetic about it because one of the pleasures of dance is its transience. One of the pleasures of it is that you have to only catch it in a collective act and then it vanishes. When you capture it on video or you crystallize it, it doesn't really translate in the same way. That connected energy that we've just experienced just there in the moment vanishes. You get something else, but it's not that. And I was just curious about that as an idea and how is it that we can maybe capture dance in a different way? And if dance making or if just being a human being is a collection of decisions which are somatically based, which have kind of like a kinesthetic intelligence, how do you capture that and what can you do with it? So it's not that we want to try and preserve dance in aspect and kind of solidify it to a point where you don't get that energy transfer, but it's what are the options, what are the potentials in the future, which makes us really interested. So this living archive, one of the things we can do is bring this AI system into the studio with us. The dancers, first of all, have to give it movement before it starts. So it comes, first of all, from a creative act of the dancer. It searches and hijacks my archive over those thousands of hours of trained material. It then expels all movements that are self-similar, and then it offers up about 100 new possibilities that you can work in, but in the style of a particular dancer. So many of you have probably seen these amazing motion capture systems where you've seen it in movies. You know, we would work with that on something like Harry Potter or Fantastic Beasts where they put dots on your body. It only actually takes 15 dots moving for us to recognize you are you, right? 15 dots, nothing else. No facial features, nothing else. And that's really interesting that actually we are kind of hardwired to be able to understand biologically how people move and understand the specifics of them. You know what it's like when you see a friend miles away in a bar. You just know by the way they stand. And that's what's been really weird about all of this Zoom time, is we don't have any of this lower body stuff, which is so critical to the way in which we understand and process what people are feeling and thinking in the moment. So I just think that's a really fascinating area for choreographers to work in.
But does having the option of AI, the capacity of AI, alter the way you approach your art?
Well, you want it to. You know, the point is it's a disruptor. You know, we talked a little bit earlier about this physical signature. The physical signature is also a demonstration of our physical habits. So the less we move, the less we do, the more entrained our physical habits are to reduce our physical capabilities, right? So that's why if you're learning new sports, if you're dancing at home on your own with loud music, if you're exploring and extending and practicing throughout your life at whatever age, you're actually keeping these kind of somatic imprints enlivened and they're growing. And when you're not doing that, that's really, that's really challenging. So,
and can you imprint them on a living form then? Is that the...
Well, the idea is that, yeah, they first of all disrupt your habits. So you look back at yourself in a way that you don't, I mean, you've never danced that phrase. So it's very unusual for a dancer to see themselves dance a phrase they've actually never danced. In the same way, it would be really interesting, for example, if you're thinking about golf. If you see Nick Faldo playing a golf shot and he's teaching you how to play golf, you are one removed. It's not you playing that shot. But if you yourself are the person playing the ideal shot, your mirror neurons work in a different way, your touch relationship, your vicarious kinesthetic empathy, all work in a different way. And you see yourself achieving something that you hadn't thought you could achieve. And that's very powerful. That's a very powerful mirror for dance making. So dancers are seeing things that perhaps they've never danced. They're seeing things that they have an aspiration to be able to do in a different way. And it fires them up creatively to make a creative choice about it. It's not about replicating it exactly. It's about using that as a creative choice to do something else with it.
And does their kind of taking on board, say it's Firebird or something, does their taking that on board mutate the original? It adds to the original. It becomes like a kind of moving and evolving dialogue with the original. What is the original? What is the original piece?
It should, but I mean, in a way, that's what you want. You want a dialogue with the original piece. You don't want to replicate the original piece. You know, we're in the business of making contemporary work that is resonant to today. So we want it to be evolving and dynamic and challenging and changing. And that's how you develop a lexicon. That's how you develop a new communication tool with your audiences. That's how you get and fire up your audiences to stay with you and stay really reacting and alive. And you know, we talked a lot today about platforms and the different kinds of platforms that can exist in. There are many outputs for that material in lots of dimensions. They're not just necessarily on stage in a stage piece. It might be, well, let's work with building this kinesthetic empathy that we have dancer to dancer with robots. We know that one of the issues with robotics right now is that the empathy is not really there. So how is it that you can start to nudge away at some of those principles, but in other dimensions?
And this doesn't intimidate you in any way, that in getting robots involved in something which seems to me like one of the most gorgeously primal human actions?
Well, I mean, I think it's just approaching everything with a beginner's mind. And I think, you know, we have an expertise, which is in physical knowledge. I've been in a studio with dancers for 30 years, nearly every day. I've worked with very many different types of bodies and types of physical intelligences, types of physical archives. And you mount up a level of experience by noticing. You know, it's interesting that in the olden days, a theatre review was called a notice, because it was what are the critics noticing while watching. And actually, I think we can all get better at noticing bodies and noticing aspects of body that are going to be useful to us, not in a Machiavellian way, but useful to us to develop our communication skills. You know, we had in the intimacy talk earlier about the idea of, you know, just being more available physically. And that means a looser physical vocabulary. That means a less tight frame. That means better eye contact. That means having a sense of what's happening in the room all the way around you. And these are things you can practice. These are physical technicities that you can practice and apply in life, in real life.
So as you compile this enormous library of movement, I asked you this when I was watching you choreograph something else you were doing. What is the application for damaged bodies, for paraplegics and quadriplegics, that you have this kind of this program of how bodies can move? What does it have? Do you foresee it having that kind of
I think all bodies are equal. And I think all bodies have an equality in terms of what their specialness is. And I think that's what we're leaning into in this, that actually everybody has access from their physical signature to be able to develop it in the way that they want. And that autonomy for me is really important. You know, one of the projects we were working on in San Diego was this really fascinating thing, which is a cognitive, it's a brain system that basically you wear a little headband, I wear a headband, and it starts by, it's like the old-fashioned game of table tennis, pong. And by thinking up and by thinking down, you can move your bat up and you can move your bat down. But you have to have experienced the sensation of up and experienced the sensation of down to be able to replicate that in mind. And that's really interesting, right? So what it's saying is that the more somatic physical experiences that we have, they are stored somewhere that can be useful in other areas. So I think that's, you know, just one example that might be quite interesting with bodies that have really like diverse capabilities. And that's really exciting because everybody has an individual body, and that individual body should be celebrated in any dimension that they want to.
Wayne, you blow my mind. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was so awesome. I love that. That was so amazing. I only went to Wayne's studio, what was that, like 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
And we were like trying to figure out a plan, but that was awesome.
Good, thank you.
That brings us to the end of Voices 2021, Day 1. Thank you for joining us from all around the world. There's more in store, though, for everyone here. We're also hosting a live show just for you viewers at home. Tim is hosting Janaea and Halima, two of our stars from the day, to kind of talk about their highlights and learnings from what a packed day it was. Tomorrow's programming will begin at 11 a.m. London time with a session called Talk to Me About the Future. And we'll start with some predictions from the Future Laboratory on the age of acceleration. Then we'll dive into the future of retail, the future of work, the future of travel, to help us understand the world we'll enter once this pandemic is behind us. To our BOF professional members watching at home, thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you at 11 a.m. tomorrow for Day 2 of Voices 2021. So long from Oxfordshire. Bye.